YouTube and good morning, Thankful Thursdays. Turning the mic over to you, Sharon. This mic is all yours.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Lorri, Cher. I think Karen's in the room, Lynn and Dove, and everyone else, whoever listens to the radio. Today is lesson 354. And I've been guided to read from What Am I by Ken's Journey. Welcome to the final summary. What am I? Of the many jewels in the Course's treasure chest, this among the most treasured, a beautiful description of who we are as God's Son. The answer Jesus gives to the question has been the underlying focus of A Course in Miracles. Inasmuch as the problem at the beginning when we chose the ego over the Holy Spirit was our making a self that is decidedly not who we are. Paralyzing. Anyway, I can't even, the flow is, he said, ask this question that, of course, he talks about Ramana Maharshi, and we've had the benefit of learning a lot about Ramana Maharshi from Regina's book, and I'm trying to remember what it is, The Inner Ramana. Okay, yeah. And then I would go off and read a lot of this stuff. And then Regina would share from his books. I mean, that was her guidance. But what am I is probably the only question that you need to answer. Because if we think we're these people, we are listening to echoes of thought. That's what it's doing. It's echoing the past and echoing our thoughts. And to discern between what's real and what is unreal is to stay present, right? So it's saying here, the answer Jesus gives to the question has been underlying focus of A Course in Miracles. So he's saying now, I am God's Son, complete and healed and whole, shining in the reflection of his love. And that's what this is. It's a reflection. It's the space that is holding, and we are the container. We are holding the whole show. And it is that. And as, a lover of truth, when this mind body is undoing, a lot of like very hateful things are coming up, And I can't say that I always loved when Ken Wapnick would say, you have no idea how much guilt you have in your mind. Or he would say, take it slow because this is a ladder. And I think sometimes I forget that, and maybe other people do, because to climb the ladder is to be honest in every moment on what is going on in your mind, right? Are you listening to the storyteller or are you listening to just silence? Because that's what really is here. This is a beautiful dream and it's made up of silence. And the silence, God's Son has made everything in this movie. So, and it's interesting because everybody always says, well, you're responsible for sight. And that is true. It's a practice. But, as the hate and all that comes up, if I don't pause, it can be a little bit troubling for me, especially that I tend to be this happy-go-lucky, loving person, But at this point, all it's done is helped me see that none of this could be real. I mean, it's obvious even when you see the pictorial composition of the world where we are like outer picture, it's outer picturing, outside picture of an inner condition. We decided that we went with the ego because of the fear of God, the fear of that we had a thought and the thought came in and that was the end of that. And that's just the Course's definition of it, but I'll go with that, But he's saying, basically, we are God. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you have unworthiness. So it takes layers of this, right? So this says, this is our response to everything the ego ever taught is true about ourselves, undoing all fears, guilt, and all pain and suffering. What remains is the eternal life given us in creation. And it doesn't look like anything. It's really like no thing. It's everything and no thing, right? And so he's saying, there's so much that I benefited, in the last, I would say, month on what was going on in the phenomena. And that was that when we see something out there, it always applies to my mind. It's what am I thinking? So a lot of times the seeming others or political parties, they bring up stuff, and what I would think is, well, I don't like this and I like this, and it's all my own thoughts. So bringing me back to the fact that I am thinking with the thinking mind, I'll get nowhere because it can only think. It doesn't know anything. It's the chatterer in the mind, right? So so living it, how can I live this through the day? Well, yesterday I had and again, I don't think you could ever talk when you're not in the past, because once a person just realize, or a seeming person, let's just say mine, realizes that you only see the past. Because if you are in the present moment, you are in silence. You are in perfect silence. Because the present is the presence, and that's all that's here. And what makes the Son of God or the sonship laugh is because we played a mean joke on ourselves, right? Now, I'm not going to like everyone. That's something I've already checked in with spirit, because liking someone is just the ego, because the ego it picks who it likes and who it doesn't. But to see the Christ, I don't look at the image, because the image is a body. So you don't need the image. It's a block. So yesterday when I was teaching, I just love being in junior high with the kids. And I mean, I tell you, I taught yesterday in junior high. Well, I just followed the teacher's plans, but it was 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know whether it's where I'm at now, but the children or the students were just so loving. And I never pictured that in a junior high. I mean, I had a career of teaching, but the thing that I'm sensing is what I bring to the table with the joy that I go when I come into work is the reason that I'm actually working right now, because that this character that I played loved children, didn't care how old they were, didn't actually just love people. But the character that I played was called Sharon, was just a very sensitive, intense, and always look for the good in people. That was just my nature. My mother used to get mad at me and say, some people squeeze a lemon when it's even rotten. But I had a joy about me even before this path, and that was because of what I was doing for a living. I was working with children. And that is what this soul loves the most, children and animals. They just are innocent, because if everything's a reflection of my mind, I'm seeing only the innocence out there. Now, I'm not comfortable when people spread hate, because I haven't looked at my own hate, right? But now I am. And there's a lot of hate in this system, but it's not necessarily my hate. It's the ego's. Because the Son of God never has hate. The Son of God is I guess you could say witnesser or whatever, but it's witnessing this light. And it says, basically what Ken has always tried to do in his teaching is tell us how much we don't want to know that we are God, right? Because there's this longing from the ego to keep bringing up the past reflections of our thought process. And the thought process is always wrong, because it's judgment. Ego can only judge. I like this and I don't like that, but it can't really get you to Oz. Holy Spirit has been guiding all of us all along. And what I have witnessed in me was I didn't have the confidence to really see that I was always being guided from inside, right? Because there's nothing out there. And, the character I played, I really found to be very interesting, because, I have like a bubbly personality, but I also have a side that's a rager, because, again, that was part of the way I grew up. My parents didn't know how to talk. They were just screamers. Now, they did talk sometimes, but it was a little bit of Often I would describe to people that it was like Jerry Seinfeld's, George's parents. They just bickered, 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 bickered. And when you come in this world, your memory of God is still there. That oneness is still there. So in the beginning, what I witnessed a lot was how nuts everybody was, believing their thoughts. Even as a child, I would say, why are they saying to each other what they think of each other? That's what came up in me when my parents would fight. Man, did they fight. But he's talking about the fact that we have to come back to purpose, a reminder always that what is our purpose? It's only God. Because there's no more playing with the trinkets of toys that we have done and throwing sand in the sandbox and acting like children when we are one. But there is an honesty in me saying, I have wanted to be a holy ego. I have wanted to be the nicest ego. And I am not, because you can't be, So as I'm going through the undoing, and it's deeper because it's much deeper now, I'm sensing how important it is for me to stay honest. Where am I and who am I? Where am I and who I am? Who am I? So where am I? I'm everywhere. I'm an escape to nowhere and everywhere. And it's actually mind-blowing when you sit with it and realize that we, as the children of God, made this dream, this crazy, insane dream, believing that somebody out there is nice and somebody out there is cruel. And, I do see that show up in my consciousness. I'm not going to deny it. But how I deal with it now is looking at how much, if nothing is out there, what am I seeing that's aggravating me the most? Well, it's my fear of love, fear of God. So when we start, or not we, because I'm teaching myself, when I start teaching myself that there's really nothing even to teach, right? But the mind training certainly does get you to a higher consciousness. And we are all... All right, well, much my sister, so I'm going to turn it off because she's just driving. Anyway, so you know what? I'm going to turn this over to you now, Doug. Thanks.
That was a great opening. Another opening of another show. Boop, boop, boop. You got me to laugh, Sharon, when you said my parents, they didn't know how to talk. They were screamers. I guess I laugh because it kind of reminded me that's the way it was at my house too.
Well, I think Jewish people, like what I sense, Dub, is we're very similar to Italian people. And what I feel is we are so, like, we believe with so much passion what our thoughts are saying. And so my parents, they didn't even speak. They just would go, what? Like that. It would scare the shit out of me. I'm sorry for butting in, but I do find that Jewish people are hysterical because we tend to be extremely dramatic. You can go after that. Thanks.
You think that I'm dramatic, really? Because I use my hands, really? No, actually, there were times in everybody's childhood where the parents were screaming. That's true, but there were also times where it was peaceful. I saw myself as a peacemaker. So when things got a little heated up, somehow I was there I thought that I was a calming effect. And I can't remember the name of the 9 things. Maureen is always talking about them. I'm a number 9. 9 is the peacekeeper, and I have a little 8 in me too.
You mean as a child you were a peacekeeper? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I'm also a peacekeeper too. I mean, if you're a 9, you're always a 9. You don't. Although, does anyone know the name of the thing I'm talking about? Maureen's always talking about it. No?
I just put it up in the chat.
What?
She wrote back.
Oh, yes. Enneagram. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mickey is always a lifesaver for me. Okay. Let's see. So today I appreciate you picked up on lesson 354, today's lesson, and I put a few pictures in the I went to see what Ken Wapping said about 354, and it wasn't there, but from Mayor Baba, who was one of the great teachers of all time, he says the entire fabric of the universe serves but one purpose, the realization of God. And that's exactly what you were saying, Sharon. You know, that is today's lesson. Let me remember. Let's see, someone, oh, okay. Um, what is today's lesson? Does anyone have it in front of them that you can?
I do. Yeah, I have
Please do. Go ahead.
354. I always forget to. So.
I just want the title.
I'm gonna find it. Give me a minute because I'm just looking through the book and I closed it. So,
Oh,
yeah.
it's about I am the Christ, and that
we stand together, Christ and I, in
Right.
peace and certainty of purpose, and in Him is His Creator. As see, it's just this oneness. That's
yeah.
it.
So that was perfect that you read from What Am I? Because what am I is the Christ. And what is the Christ, by the way? Even though it seems to be two different words like God and Christ, but they're really one and the same. Christ is just the family name. You know, like Sharon Christ and Lynn Christ and Lorri Christ, Mickey Christ, Sharon, Michelle Christ. They're all, it's the family of Christ. It's a family of oneness, sameness, equality. So, you know, you come to the end of the course after doing 300 and whatever lessons, and you're on 354, and he's just telling you truth is. This is the truth. God is one. It's not Christ and God. The only distinction that they make in the course is Christ did not create God. God created Christ, but they're one and the same. He just extended himself. That's extending one into one into one. There's just always one. One is the only number that Jesus knew as the Christ. So whenever he met anyone, and we're into the Festival of Lights as well as Christmas, and Festival of Lights, which people call Hanukkah, I'll be speaking on that this Sunday at John Monday's. He calls the topic, there'll be a number of people there speaking, but he calls the topic the innocence of wisdom. That's the topic. And the innocence of wisdom is knowing that you are the Christ. And I was looking, and I borrowed some of this. I was just listening to Keith, and his last Sunday topic was on light. We are the light. You have to light candles. You know, we light candles as symbols, and you know, if you're Jewish, you probably think that the light is the fact that they had, instead of oil for one candle, they had for 8 candles, and that's a miracle. You know, that's the miracle of lights. But no, the miracle is that we're into the second coming. The second coming is that we are the light. Not there was a light and the light has gone out and somebody's responsible for the light going out. No, we are the light. Notice there's 8 candles, and one of my favorite movies from Netflix, Sense8, is about the oneness of mankind, literally the oneness of mankind. I heard you say, you know, the ego likes to say, I like this person, I don't like that person. Of course, those are our thoughts. And it's not they are our thoughts, they are thoughts of the ego that has nothing to do with reality. But yet we choose to actually hang on to those thoughts like they're my thoughts. Like I just like this person and I just don't like that person. That's a thought that doesn't mean anything. I mean, the whole course is lesson one. It doesn't mean anything except the meaning that you want to give to your thoughts. That's all. That's all meaning is in this world. I give meaning to my thoughts. My thoughts tell me I don't like this person because they remind me of God knows what. And I'm saying this person looks like a body, dresses like a body, talks like a body, but I'm not seeing the light. Only the light can see the light. So we have two different ways of seeing. We have the ego who always speaks first and loudest, and we listen to that. And we're on a Russian roulette wheel where we're about to kill ourselves by killing another, either kill or be killed, or we're listening to spirit, which is our right mind. The right mindedness of oneness is I'm seeing myself in all that I meet. Who was Jesus but a man who saw the face of Christ in all that he met and remembered God? That God is not this unruly person that has strict commandments. So I have this other picture that was put up by St. Augustine. It says, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Just let it loose. It will defend itself. So how do you let God loose? How do you let God loose? It sounds like I need do nothing. You know, the student teacher thinks he has to do something, say something, be something, is forgetting the truth. I need do nothing. I am the truth. We are the truth. To love the truth is to love the love of God, which is all there is. God and love, two different words, seem to have two different meanings. It's the same thing. All there really is love. So getting back to what Mayor Baba said here, the entire fabric of the universe has but one purpose, the realization of God, which is another way of saying the realization of love. Only the love is real. Nothing else is real. So if you hang out and only the love is real, you're home. What does it mean to return home? Be the loving being soul that you are. That's all. You know, it's an awareness of perfect oneness. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lorri Love, or anyone who wants to speak.
Okay, I'll speak. What is that? I don't know whose noise that is in the background of the. There's
Okay, I'll stop it. I'll stop.
maybe that was yours. It sounds like these gears running and shh and little bells or anyway. I wanted to speak to what you guys were saying, but first welcome and say hi to Regis and Cher and Mickey and hi to you guys too, because I was kind of in and out real quick. And Sharon, I loved what you were saying because I stepped out of the room and as I was walking back in, I heard you talking about these kids yesterday, the seventh and eighth graders or whatever you saw. And I expected you to say how awful they were. And you said how wonderful they were and how, because your whole thing and what you project and what you put out into the world is this love and this joy with children. And they respond back. And the reason I expected you to say, oh, they're terrible is because I know this one woman who was a teacher for many years and then she went back to substituting and she's just going, the kids are awful today. The kids are awful today. But you're saying the kids were wonderful. And I'm so happy to have heard that because it is true. It's our projection. It's what we put out. And just like with that, like I always say, I think the post office does a fabulous job. You know, they really, really do. They handle billions of pieces of mail, and they may lose a few here and there, but they do a great job. And like where I'm at the other day, one of my friends was complaining about the road commission not getting the roads plowed right. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? They have so many roads, and they even do my road, and there's only a few people living on our road. I can't believe that they do such a fabulous job, and I'm just so grateful for that. And I'm grateful for this course and for people like you guys who keep me in gratitude. And I can just bless my friend and bless him. And it's like, yeah, you're in the ego right now. It's okay. That's not who you are, complaining and everything, and just know who he really is. So, and I also wanted to speak to what you said, Dove, about Meher Baba, and you come to the end. And when you come to the end, it's truth is, just truth is. And I've been noticing that lately, that so much ego has dropped off, that rather than feeling like I have to undo something or undo the ego, it's just, oh no, just go straight to truth. Just go straight to truth. It's like that ego has been undone, or at least that piece has been. And I can just rest in God, rest in truth, just sit in that. And I don't have to fix anything of the ego. And when I lived with Rod, what I noticed was that he didn't do a lot of psychological work. It didn't seem like he didn't journal. He didn't do tapping. He didn't go to therapy. He didn't talk about his issues. He just basically set an intention and then just let it go and meditated on God.
He sounds like me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, and that's perfect, because that's what heals it, because all the undoing and journaling and tapping, that all works when you think you're an ego that has to undo the ego. And I still believe in that. Yes, do it. Absolutely. And I still do when I'm stuck. But I'm getting to this place where I'm going, I don't need to tap on that. I just need to sit in the Christ self. That's it. And that's, well, fairly new. Like in the last couple of years, that's been happening more and more and more. But it's like, wow, this is easy. But I couldn't do it before, because when you have the ego identity of, I have this problem and I have to fix it, or I have to pray that it gets healed, or I have to ask for the miracle, and you get all caught up in that, and you keep doing it over and over and over, which I did, forever, and I still do. It just kind of, it can work, because your goal, it's like what Jesus says in I Need Do Nothing, that section, chapter 18, section 7, he says, those long periods of meditation and those working at undoing the ego will work because of their purpose, but they're not necessary. And so it just feels so much better. And I was having a grievance yesterday, and actually it was this grievance against Ken Wapnick, because I've been feeling like, I love Ken. I thought he was the greatest teacher ever. But I still I disagree with his stance on don't expect any healing from the body. And we know that it's not the body, it's about the mind healing. But he had such a strong influence about don't expect healing from the body, don't expect healing of the body, blah, that, I've had this grievance. And so in my meditation, what I got was, you're rebelling. And I'm going, I'm rebelling. What do you mean you're rebelling? And it's like, you don't have to fight against truth. Truth is, health is, love is, peace is, health is inner peace. You can just accept what the Course says about when the mind is healed, all the form is going to go healing with it. There's no form that won't heal. Now is the body healed because the mind that projected onto the body is healed. You can just accept that. You don't have to rebel and fight because you feel guilty about disagreeing with your teacher, your hero, Ken Wapnick. You don't have to feel guilty and fight and rebel. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can just accept God is, love is, health is, truth is, just like what you were saying, Dove, what Meher Baba said, truth is. And when we get into that, we can also lovingly, easily let go of the ego. Because, oh, for a long time now, I keep noticing, oh, that's a story from the past. Oh, that's another story. I don't really want that story anymore. That story bores me now. I don't need that story. But there is still some attachment to the story. And I was meditating this morning and noticing some stuckness in the sacral chakra. And it's like, that's relationships, stories. There was a lot of wounds there in the story of this particular life. And I'm going, you know what? I don't need that anymore. I think that can be cleared out, grieved, and let go, because it's not who I am. It's never who anyone is. And when I have done this grief work on what seems to be my own personal life, it expands for the whole world. All what we have done to ourselves with all this suffering and projecting a world of sin, death, and fear, and suffering and loss. And it's like, oh, the sadness that I feel is huge. And at the same time, I don't swim in that sadness like I used to. I don't need to, because of sitting in the Christ self. The more that I sit in that and am aware of that in myself, again, it even seems weird to say myself because there's no separate self, but the more I sit in that, the more I see it in everyone and quickly know it. I think I mentioned this tragedy that happened or appeared to happen in my granddaughter's kindergarten school, not her class, but the other class. And that little boy, that he was playing underneath the car because he liked to play mechanic, and his mother ran over him and he died. And it was horrifying. That's just about as horrifying a story as you get. And it really tripped me up for a while. But then when I go to it now, because it can still like, oh my God, I can get into that drama really quickly and into the ego, but it's like, stop. No, the child is Christ. His parents are Christ. I can hold that truth for them, that their minds can be healed and they can be free and they can not have to suffer with this for the rest of their lives. So I'm really so grateful for this. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon. And also, Zulma, you just said Zulma's not going to be here today. I have to get going because I'm out of town and I'm going to meet a bunch of people. I might be on for a little while, but I won't be talking after 9:30. Okay, I'm turning this mic over to you, Sharon.
Hey, yeah, okay, so Zuma won't be here today, but I have something at 9. I think it's 9:30, yeah. In any case, Lorri, what you were sharing about Ken, what I've come to see is that just from, listening and reading his stuff, he was a very compassionate teacher. I would think, and this is just my mind, making it up, but I would think that he was doing that because many people don't heal their body. And he always, another thing he would say is I think it was metaphysics. He would say, just be kind. And that's because if we keep trying to get to Oz when we're already in Oz, that's a problem. We walk the yellow brick road by ourselves, really, because there's no one else out there. And the wizard is the Holy Spirit, and the wizard is doing its work. So the body itself, to me, is only a problem if there's an expectation that it needs to heal, because many, this is the sonship waking up. It's not one awakening. Many people have had cancer, and I think you're going to die from something anyway. So I feel that Ken was always compassionate with everyone. He didn't, if somebody was really hurting, he didn't probe, or, he would just be sweet because of his compassionate nature. That's how I take it anyway. And I have had a lot of healing. I have fibromyalgia, and it's like definitely in remission. It's definitely not the problem that I had for years, but that was trauma. The body keeps the score, is where all trauma lies, in the body. So what I was feeling was trauma that was really coming, it felt icky. It felt like, ooh, but it was necessary until it wasn't. And I feel as though the most important thing on a spiritual path is to keep it my own. I think being in groups is so positive, but everyone has a curriculum of their own. And what I would do sometimes is share with people, well, this worked for me, breath work, and it does actually, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. Or like I'm doing a Corinne Zuko's chakra thing, and I love her. She's just, what she exudes is warmth. And, you know, my feeling is when you can feel the warmth of another soul, of course, if you see somebody that's not warm, then the Course in Miracles people will say, well, then you're seeing your own. Well, yeah, you're seeing separation. That's all you're seeing. But there are beings that are much harsher than others. That's just a given. And I guess that's just where they land, right? In the sonship. And right-mindedness is always there, because it can't not be, because we're dreaming. And it's really not about anyone but this mind. Because what else is there? To accept the atonement is to realize the atonement is the thing that's working through everyone. So everyone will be healed, you know, through healing. But the ego has set this up in a way that, you know, if we don't choose, you know, I had like a lot of stuff I downloaded, and my perception is not going to be the right perception because it's still perception. So what I saw a lot in spiritual groups is how people want to be done with the ego, including me. But the ego's not bad. It's just thought. You know, the shifts I've had is that thought will fall away, the less attention that we give it, but we can't sometimes not feel our feelings, not feel our despair, not feel our sadness, because they're all inclusive. Anything in the sonship that's thought and emotions is inclusive, meaning that we're not wrong or bad if we still have sadness, because you're still the Son of God. And the love that we feel here is the reflection of heaven. But the being in heaven is a whole different ballgame. When I say being, we are the being. But I hardly think that this reflection is comparative to the love that we really are. When you read the Course in Miracles, it tells you this is beyond our comprehension, but there's a memory. There is a memory. And I have often asked inside, where is the memory? Well, it's right here. It's just this awareness of oneness, perfect oneness. So, you know, the path itself is a struggling path in many different levels, but what I would do sometimes is listen to teachers that would tell me, tell other people, not me. I didn't hear it about me, but you're not hearing the Holy Spirit because you're not following it. As if that person could even tell what somebody else is following. That is when we get into trouble. And there's chakras, when there's awakened beings or claim to be in unity that still have ego, of course. And if they haven't cleared out the roots, they're still there. So ego will pop up and say, oh, I didn't hear you. You don't sound like you're from the Holy Spirit. All of that is craziness. And that's what I loved about Ken Wapnick. He would never say anything about guidance because he knew that everything that we're listening to is channeled, even the ego. So like, I feel like the ego went on this path with the idea that it could be more, better, reach potential, and all the other stuff that is absolutely hogwash. The reality is that it's what Lorri shared with Rod, it's God is, and you cease to speak, and that's the end of it. Now, I have opened myself up truly from guidance because like 4 years ago, I took a class with Lisa Natoli and Bill and Free, and they were talking about looking at Robert Perry's book. So I got it. I have it sitting here, but I'm like, oh, no, that's not Ken Wapnick's book. And what I've gotten from within is it's saying the same thing. Forget the story behind what Robert Perry might have said about Ken Wapnick. It's just like there's a girl that's coming on John Mundy's in a couple of weeks. And a lot of times she I forget her name, but in any case, she has a beef with Wapnick and she didn't even know him. She's just repeating. And this is what we as egos do. But we're all the same. So the wisdom's in every teaching. What I loved about the Course in Miracles was that it's a mind training. And the mind training are these lessons. They are and also to go deeper into it, because this is a depth of love. And the miracle impulses you hit as you go within and you feel the love, a memory. But the actual undoing is just it's a classroom, you could say. It's a classroom of just learning. And this is another thing I think Ken made up, that it was a classroom. I think that's giving tools to us on not to take this seriously, to use our thoughts to work for us by dropping them. So I've done very little journaling, and I really think that this might happen in a different way, where Spirit's leading me now to write more, because as as this mind goes deeper, the clarity comes through, and I realize that it's all for me, everything. Even, of course, we always say that every negative thing is working out for our good. And I never sit in a group and say, tell someone what to do, because it's not my business. It's not my business. And I learned that from 12 steps. It was like, stay in your own lane. It's not your business. And I think that in course communities, sometimes people want to help you, so they come out and say things, or they'll say, like, stop telling stories. The story isn't real. Well, that's for them. That's not for the person telling the story. So this is where ego gets into things too. Ego gets into just having a one-upsmanship on, and it's not the person doing it. It's these echoes of differences that are doing it, right? Because the sameness is the simplicity of salvation, really. I personally hated salvation. It was like a word that I would like, ew, 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 because I thought it was rather Christian. And again, my conditioning came from Judaism. So it's kind of like, to get through these concepts and to realize they're saying salvation in A Course in Miracles is awakening, but we're already awake. That's the whole point. If we do this, we're being led to do it. There's no need to do this work. I feel like it mitigates guilt. I do, because there's so much guilt in our mind. You can see it right now with the political situation. There's so much hate. And I think it's a good thing now that hate's coming up, because that's what's been there. That's the underbelly of this country, is hatred about differences, And just because I have the arrogance of believing, well, get over that. Include everybody. I don't want people to ban books. I don't want people to be left out that are gay or any of that. Well, that's true on the relative level. But the truth is that every one of us is really in Oz. That's it. And the walk that we're doing is a slow walk. It's a mindful walk, and it's an honest walk, And I had an addiction to listening to others for years and years. And I still do. I mean, if I want total oneness, if I want total silence, just listen to Keith. That's me. That's my mind. Now, Ken, this is interesting. I'm a big fan of Ken Wapnick because of everything I said, but he screams when he talks. And see, what happens is the memory of the character hears her parents. Just like, I've often wondered why Dove sometimes, there's this ability for me to realize Dove Fishman has reminded me of my dad in some ways, and that's what's happening, because we're seeing the past and those past thoughts. So, except Dove had wisdom, and it didn't appear that my dad had any. So, but at the same time, they were Jewish. My dad was Jewish. He was an old man. So the thing about getting out of this whole matrix is the honesty. Who we competing with? There's nobody out there. All these projections from Sharon's mind are coming from my mind. Do you really think a projection can really get you upset? If you're not listening to the ego, it can't. But when you listen to it, there's always this echo of, oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned. And that was probably the biggest trigger I had in my consciousness, because of just the little things that I had gone through, or big things in my formative years. So he's basically Ken Wapnick. What I find my heart is so with him is how much compassion he had for his students. and how much humility he had. He didn't say, I'm in unity. He didn't say, I'm this, I'm that. And we hear this from many teachers. Why? Because basically, I think the root chakra is still coming up and say, I did it, when in fact, there's no I to do it, right? So, that's why, when I do read Robert Perry stuff, and I really love his work too, he's a magnificent soul. And it's not something that I basically thought before, because I was into the story of, he tried to usurp, Ken. Nobody should do that. Ken is the master teacher. Well, there isn't a master teacher, because we're all listening with our minds. There's no master teacher. There's only one, and that we are all it. I have hearing aids in that are Bluetooth, and my son's calling me, so it's just funny. Anyway, one of the things I think that the reason another reason why I'm so attracted to Ken, though, is he says, like, Jesus is not saying we are now going to disappear into the heart of God. This is our ultimate goal, but he is telling us here we still have work to do in the classroom of our lives, in which his love will teach us to forgive. That's the thing I loved about him. There's no end game. There is no end game to awakening. We are going to be unfolding for eternity, right? And Brittany Shawley, yes, she'll be on. Yeah, because she has some issues. Well, I don't want to bring her up as someone that's, I don't know her. I just know that I would see her on Facebook always telling stories about Ken. And these are stories that the ego mind is making up. Brittany's not making them up. The ego is a judge machine. So it will find fault with everyone. And most of all, the little me, right? Because it's always telling us that, at least for me, it was art school. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't as good as the other art students. Because that's the ego's job, to get us into pain. Why? Because I call it the helper. I think if you make an ego your ally and don't get all upset about it, it just wants to balance out. Why wouldn't it? It's just thought. And when the balanced thoughts come, they're not even like, the balancing of thoughts comes from spirit. As many course teachers, and Dove has said this, is purification is our work. That's all we are doing 24/7. And when I fall asleep, what is the best thing for me to do? Laugh. Because once you laugh, you are out of the contraction. Because that's all this is. It's an ebb and flow of contraction. And also there's this belief in me that I really did love playing Sharon. Why? Because I like being separate. I like being special. But it's such a, I can't say it enough, like Keith's last teaching about the light, he was basically saying that you get tired of it all. I mean, has it given you enough pain? Well, what happens is, if the truth is always leading you, it will lead you as the individual into the wholeness. It has to. That's the promise, and that's what is true. So anyway, he says here, then I lose myself in my identity. He wanted to tell people, Ken, that you don't just stop, because I was scared of that. Regina would always talk about, she didn't want to just have unity. She wanted to go all the way, whichever that means. But she's not special. If she goes all the way, it would just be just another popcorn pop. A lot of times listening to another, what I've realized is they're talking to themselves about their own needs, their own teachings. But all of it has helped this mind gain the clarity that it needs, and the confidence to come back and say, it's been me the whole time. Either way, in the higher self or the lower self. And the lower self is the ego, the lower ego. Because when we wake up, we are still in this domain, unless, I don't know if Regina's all the way woken up, but that was her goal. She would just say, I just want she had a belief, I guess, that Michael Langford had gotten there. And all of that didn't appeal to me, but I couldn't be honest, because she was the teacher. And the teacher knows. That's what this soul always thought. The teacher knows. Well, the teacher's never been informed. Not ever. We are being perfectly taught. Always. Over to you, Doug.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for the honor of thinking that when you're talking to me, I remind you of your father, who was a very beautiful being. And every now and then he did something that you didn't like. So it reminds me of our conversations every now and then. I say the perfect thing. You say, well, you're really not a nice person. I said, all right, I guess you're talking.
I didn't say you weren't a nice person. I was saying sometimes you don't appear to be psychological. Don't take it like you're not a nice person.
Psychological, me?
Well, look, I'm in my filter. So my filter is always going to tell me, like, my father was not psychological, and you always talk about the end game. And I think this is a process. I think that you have a very high IQ. You know the course by heart, and I think you're a devoted teacher and student. But it doesn't mean that sometimes I think that you always talk about true empathy, and I tend to be attracted to empathy even here. And I know Ken will say, well, then you're making it real, but so what? So what?
Okay.
Because it's actually a doorway. Anyway, go ahead. Because I always thought you were a nice person. But if you want to have, like, what's the word? Compassion, I wouldn't call you Duff, because you would probably say, it's your mind. So I hope I'm not hurting your feelings.
No, not at all, because I know whatever it is you're saying really isn't true, but that's okay.
Right. There's nothing that is true. Not one thought. This is an opinion, but I have to say that I too have the same issues. I think just growing up we're all different as people, and we all grew up with, like, my parents never got into, like, if I was afraid, they say it's a mishigas. Now, I don't know, everybody knows what that is, but that's Yiddish for crazy, right? So that's why, Ken Wapnick reminds me of my dad sometimes, because he talks so loud. And I loved my dad very much, but, I also have other issues with him. But with you, I sometimes wish you would just meet me where I am. And that's what you've been doing. So that's all I have. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. What you just said kind of reminds me of one of Ken Wapnick's favorite phrases right out of the course. Let them be as vicious and as hateful as they can. It could not hurt you if you recognize that it was a dream. And that's right out of the course. I think it's chapter 17, section 8. Maybe it's 27. I'm sorry, section 8. Yeah. I mean, our projections onto people are just our projections. Whenever you see somebody outside of you as, quote, different, it's just our own thoughts about what we either like or don't like that we see out there. And usually it's what we don't like, because what we don't like comes from guilt. And, you use the word salvation, and all salvation, lesson 140 says, only salvation can be said to cure, only. So it doesn't say there's 2 or 3 other things. And what is salvation? But the removal of the complete removal of guilt, so that there's no place for the guilt to come back to. It's not just a little lessening of the guilt and a little bit more of the forgiveness. No, it's complete removal is salvation. And that's the purification that you were speaking about, number 7 of the 50 miracle principles. What I want to also just mention while we're still on it, and we want to thank Mickey for putting up Brittany Shawley. And yeah, we all kind of know Brittany Shawley, but yes, I was talking to John, and he said, I didn't know that he said, I happened to watch one of her podcasts, and I realized that she is really not a Ken person. And so I mentioned that to Mickey, and Mickey said, just tell John just to talk about Jesus. He's a big Jesus person. And I happened to tell that to John. He said, thank you very much, Mickey. So I just wanted to know, thank you very much. So he's going to focus on Jesus and certainly not Ken. So yeah, I mean, and she's a perfect person in the community. There's a lot of people who don't like Ken Wapnick. I mean, that whole thing about Ken Wapnick has nothing to do with Ken personally. It has to do with the fact that they think that he took half the course and didn't allow it in the FIP edition. And of course, that is not true. But, I'm not going to keep going on with that. Speaking about Mickey, Mickey and I were talking. Sometimes you find someone in the course that you can talk to, and that's certainly true about Mickey. And I was talking to her about addictions, and I have this addiction. I was telling her that uh, there's two people in my mind. There's people in the course community. There's people in the course community that I do not talk about my addiction at all. And there's people outside the course community where it's okay to talk. So obviously there's a thing that there's some shame on my part about my addiction. I guess sneezing has something to do with it. Anyway, the idea of addiction, everyone has an addiction. I say that to Michelle all the time. The word trauma, addiction, same thing. Words are meaningless until you realize what's underneath the words. Wow. So what's underneath addiction and trauma is the idea that you have made an idol out of something, and the only purpose for idols is to be more, want more, get more. I mean, that's right out of the Course in Miracles, the Antichrist, chapter 29, section 8. All addictions, exactly as Mickey said, are idols. So we took a look at it, and we're looking at it, stepping back and saying, hey, wow, what is this for? Ask of all things in this world, what is it for? And we actually applied Rafi's three. Well, is it for approval? Is it for control? Is it for security? And I looked at it, I said, no, it's for approval. And I just told Mickey, we only had to talk about 2 or 3 days ago. I said, Mickey, yesterday, I said, Mickey, I want you to know I'm healed from the addiction. Actually, it took 1 day, healed from the addiction. As soon as you realize what you're doing it for, and you realize how insane it is, it wasn't there anymore for me. Literally, my life has changed because of it, literally.
What was your addiction? I didn't get that.
Oh, you know what the addiction is?
No.
You want to know, Sharon?
Yes.
Sex.
Oh. Okay. Well, sex is, you can have that the rest of your life. I mean, that's okay.
honey, it's a different thing. It's completely different. It's that you have it for the rest of your life. Now, if something runs you, you don't want it for the rest of your life, because that's the ego.
Right. Okay. I see.
Okay. So we all have an addiction. I'm not telling you what yours is. You asked me what mine is, but it's not there.
Many friends that have that.
Not there anymore when you apply what Rafi's 3 things are. Do you use it for security, control, or for acceptance? And once you realize that it's one of those 3 things, you can step back and look at it. With that, I'm complete.
Well, I would like to speak to what you guys have said, because I have some comments, and that security, control, and acceptance, that's part of the Sedona method too. When you let go of what your perceived needs are, it's one of the processes in the Sedona method. Could I let go of wanting control? Could I let go of wanting security? Could I let go of wanting acceptance? And then when you let go, you find that you have them. As the Christ self, you have everything. And so you're right, Dov, we're all addicted. We're all addicted to our thoughts. Sometimes we project those outside of us, like there is an idol or something out there, whether it be sex or drugs or other substances or gambling, or in my case, the old romance addiction, which I don't have anymore. So when we let go of those things that we think will make us happy, and we recognize the only happiness comes from our Christ self, being who, as God created us, accepting atonement. And I could have said that for the last 20 years, even while the ego was still seeking outside myself. But I knew it. I mean, we all know this. We all know that our only happiness comes from God. And so now the difference is that I can quickly, oops, that's not going to make me happy, and move into resting and being. And then I loved what you said, Sharon, about Ken being very compassionate. And I had thought too that maybe the way he was teaching it was to get us really grounded in non-duality, because I agree with you. A lot of people can't heal their bodies, and I couldn't for the longest time with the skin cancer on my face, and I finally got the surgery. But I look back on that and I noticed that that was ego. That was, I wanted to prove that I could do this. I'm at a completely different place now. It's not proving anything, it's accepting the love of God and accepting the truth. God is, love is, life is. Sickness does not reflect life, just life is, health is. And so it's not proving anything from the ego standpoint. It's really just accepting truth, accepting love, receiving love. So it's a totally different place. And I do love Ken Wapnick. I love his teachings. Every time I listen to him or read his stuff, except for the part where he says, don't expect healing of the body. Other than that, I think Ken is fabulous. And you had mentioned, Sharon, about breath work works for you. That works great for me too. And also working with the chakras, that works great for me as well. But everyone is different. I love the Sedona method. And I had friends that didn't like it at all. It didn't work for them at all. The Sedona method is more of a mental process. And I find that I need both. I need the mental processes and I need the heart body centered processes. I need both. But not everybody does, especially guys. Guys frequently do the mental processes. But, some of my guy friends were the ones who did not like the Sedona method. So interesting. It's just whatever works for people. And I also appreciated, Sharon, what you said about other people's issues are none of my business. And even if you see somebody who has an issue, it's still your issue because it's your projection and your dream. So it's not all the way there, but getting to the place of, wait a minute, I can't even say, oh, that person doesn't get it or that person has a problem. I'm like, nope, there is no person who doesn't get it or has a problem. It's always my mind believes that there's something outside of me that's separate from me, that's different from me, that there is an other. So it doesn't land. It just, things that used to just torque me like crazy just don't land anymore. And it's like, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. So I'm grateful that I could be here this morning because I normally would have canceled, but I figured, no, it can work. So I'm going to let go of the mic and thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lynn, for this venue. Thank you, Dove, for this venue. And I just want to say too that as I've been reviewing the people who have been my greatest teachers and the most wonderful, helpful people, it's this ACIM gathered community. Dove, Lynn, Sharon, everyone, Mickey, Regis, you guys have blessed and helped me so much. And I am just so grateful for all of you. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to let go of the mic.
Thank you very much, Lorri. That was beautiful. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. By the way, something you said earlier that reminded me of me. Peace is, love is, God is, truth is, that's why we say isness is your only business. And yeah, I mean, that's how the whole idea of Mandy Soak came up. As now we have a Monday morning program, starts at 10, goes to 11 on Mandy Soak's poetry. But her title of the book, I said, wait a minute, that's what I say. Isness is your own, because when it says God is, and Ken Wapnick will tell you, God is the only truth in 1,300 pages of the Course in Miracles. Everything else is a concept. But you can even eliminate the word God. God is a noun. Isness is a verb. Like the rabbi, I think it was the Rabbi Kushner or somebody who wrote, God is a verb. God is a verb. So in the verb, you have the eternal, unlimited love of God. The word God, I mean, must be a million different ways to describe the word God. You know, every religion has another way of looking at God. But isness, you can't describe isness. It's always the same. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. One of the worst things people could say to me from when I went through all my losses in my 40s was, it is what it is. I would say, no, it's not. And see, that's how much ego I had back then. Because I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with it. I wanted to get, because that is the whole course. It is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is. Yes, it is. It is. It is. See that it is and God is the same thing. If you think it's not, well, it's because ego says, well, no, God is different than it. No, those are words. Those are thoughts. They don't mean anything. Yeah, whole course is in lesson 1. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, I put something up on the board by Ken Wapnick from his quotes. It says to look upon the ego, like look upon the word God and the word it, without judgment and with gentle laughter is forgiveness. So the moment you judge anything in this world, you are the ego. And to be able to look upon anything in this world, no matter what someone says, without judgment, is to be in your right mind, literally. And you can only be in your right mind or your wrong mind. And there are 2 different minds, capital M mind and small m mind. It is perfect. It is what it is, Sharon. You're right.
I just hated, I wasn't, when all that happened, I was just so blown away by that everybody would always say, well, it is what it is. Or they would say, you have to meet life on life's terms. And I'd be, what? And then I realized that was spirit talking to me, because you're either talking to the ego or spirit. That's how it goes.
I just realized, even though it didn't occur to me when I said it, it is what S is. S in Latin means it is. I forgot to even say that. And so when you take S, which is 2 weekends, and he was really doing a Western version of Tibetan Buddhism, the way it is the only way it could be. It is, it isn't that, oh, I wish I had different parents. I wish, no. That's the ego always wants to see something different, something more, something better. It is the only way isness is. It doesn't change because you think it should be better, more, different. You got to laugh, really. You simply got to laugh. And I always say, if I didn't do S, and it wasn't the it isness that you finally get in the S training, it was the idea that they had a process on the ego called the anatomy of the ego, in which you got to see the ego is simply a stack of memories from the past. Anything that ever hurt you, anything that ever annoyed you or bothered you or you didn't like, keeps coming up over and over and over and over and over, until you flatten the stack. Talking about the Sedona method, we're talking about Rafi, and Rafi comes from the Sedona method. So he puts the Sedona method into almost everything that we do here. And it always gets down to, is this for approval, control, or security? And once you become aware that you're doing this for something that's insidious, stupid, silly, I don't need to do this anymore. I mean, what do I need it for approval? Why, why would I do anything for approval? Well, obviously I was doing it for approval, but once you really are aware of what you're doing, that's when you step back and you look, you say, that's why I'm doing this. And then you realize how silly it is. Why do I want approval? But Dove didn't want approval. I'm not denying it. Denying, of course, is saying that, oh well, I don't want approval. Well, obviously, Dove did want approval. That's why I had addictions, and we all have addictions. But you can look at it the same way. You can have a consultation with Nikki, and she'll ask you the same questions, and all of a sudden, up comes you. Oh, is that the reason I'm addicted, for that silly reason? Control and security are the same thing. Control is obviously the ego wants to be in charge, and if you're doing the course, that's not something that I take second place to gain first. Is always the Course in Miracles. And other security, no. If you're doing the course, you know that everything is given to you. You literally know that. Same as what Lynn was talking about the other day, that just things are given to her. Doesn't have to think about it. I think Mickey said the same thing the other day. Everything's taken care of. I don't have to think about it. So control, security, and approval. Yeah. And approval is a biggie for me. Obviously, not that I consciously think about it, but obviously that is where the sex comes from. To have sex. No need for control, no need for sex, no need for security, no need for any of it. If you think you have a need, the need comes from lack, and lack comes from guilt. In that wonderful paragraph in lesson 187, paragraph 6 says, those who understand what true giving means must laugh at all the forms of pain and loss and sickness and grief and even death, because the one idea behind all of them is sacrifice, which is choosing one over the other. And that's pretty much what control, security, and approval is all about. Choosing one over the other. So the word the Course uses is sacrifice. And sacrifice is the root of all neediness, lack, feeling less than, unworthy. Anybody want to share anything at all? Nikki? Miss Sharon? Lynn? Regis, you've been so quiet.
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is an amazing conversation. I love that we're honest and open, and really discussing things that are in our general experience, rather than just some kind of pie in the sky thought. We're talking about really anything that has to do with the body is uh it's a part of our dream, and that's the situation is, do I want to keep dreaming? Do I want to keep identifying with this world and this thing that I appear to be? And just asking the question, am I addicted to the physical world? Am I addicted to my family? Am I addicted to my children? Am I addicted to cookies. There are many, 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 many things that I use in this world to keep me grounded. We call it keep me grounded, keep me in the world, keep me in this dream. And of course, that's all that is, the ego just maintaining its life. It doesn't want to die. And it thinks that if you recognize that that's all that's happening is that we're being the ego is addicted to us. It's it's sucking our life away. Its source and its energy is my mind, and it's just leeching off me like a parasite. And so, when I when I look at why do I want to keep this thing that keeps me in this addiction of my family, my body, food, sex, um, gambling, whatever it is that we're addicted to. It really is just we're just like remember in the movie The Matrix when they went and saw where the people actually were, the humans. They were just like, in some kind of a state where they were just being used as an energy source, like a battery, and their minds were being kept locked up in this illusion of believing that they're humans in the world, and that they have ups and downs and joys and fears and all that kind of stuff. That's a perfect description of what the ego is doing. It's sucking our life away, keeping us in this dream state. And unlike the movie, which, I'm grateful that it's true, that, the real world is not some hellscape, but the real world itself is us being free from that blood-sucking monster. And, I mean, I'm even giving it a lot of credit for being something it's not and couldn't possibly be, because I'm the one who's giving it that. I'm the one who wants that. I think that's in my best interest to keep myself loyal to this thing. And so that's the only issue, that's the only problem. And, we'll do anything to keep ourselves caught up in this. We'll marry somebody we can't stand and fight with them day and night. And but that keeps me, it keeps me going, keeps me in the game. We'll destroy ourselves by, overeating, or working a job that we hate and becoming neurotic, and all these things we do, we're doing it to ourselves. There's really nothing out there and no one out there. The body itself is in my mind. This world is in my mind. And I'm seeing it backwards. I'm just looking through the wrong end of the telescope. I'm just seeing it backwards. And so this is really all I have to do is ask myself how, just like Jesus asks, how long, O Holy Son of God? How long am I going to have to wait for you to, recognize that this is not what you want, and to let it go and come home? You're only hurting yourself. But again, we think that it brings us pleasure to be sad. It brings me joy to, the feeling that comes up in a couple days. Today's the 19th, December 22nd is when my mother passed away 24 years ago. And my sister, sent me a message, and, we're looking at, mom's been gone for 24 years, blah, blah, blah. Why? Why mom is not gone? She's here. Why do I keep bringing up these things that give me a sense of nostalgia? Oh, it feels so good. No, it doesn't feel good. the ego doesn't know what good feeling is. To the ego, pleasure and pain are the opposite. Doesn't even know what real pleasure is. And we don't know what real pleasure is because we're just so entranced by this world and by these things of this world. So, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is tragic delay in time. Every time I think about it, it is a tragic delay in time. In reality, we're hurting ourselves day after day after day after day, and thinking that we deserve it. We really think we deserve it. We really think that's what we are. So, anyway, I see Dove is going to go walk happy. Good thing. Does anybody else want to say anything? Because since Selma's not here, we do have some open time. And
Lynn, I just
yes,
want to say something about what you just said. It was really good. The phrase you used, it keeps us in the game. And I remember way back when, and this is even before I knew about the Course in Miracles, I felt like I had a really good childhood, and there were issues, but I always felt like guilty because my clients were sexually abused and physically abused and told they were stupid and worthless and became drug addicts. And I'm like, how come I'm so screwed up? And I didn't have a childhood like that. So then when I lost custody of my daughter and had that horrible stuff going on, there was a part of me that felt like, oh, finally, I have something that I can say was traumatic and horrible. And it's like, how sick is that? But it kept me in the game. It was like, oh, I can relate. I'm part of other, I'm like other people now. So anyway,
Wow.
that's what I wanted to say. It was just weird. Ego.
that's crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, yeah. And it's not just that. When things do happen, here's how the mind of Lynn goes, and I bet you the mind of everybody else going the same way. Something's happening, something happened to one of my kids, something's going wrong. What's going on in Lynn's mind? How am I going to tell this story? How I'm gonna now this is gonna be great. These guys are gonna hear this story and they're gonna think this and this and this, and they're gonna how am I gonna tell this story? It's not even I'm not even present to be with the person in the state of panic or whatever that they're in, because a part of me is over here scripting it so that I can get some traction out of it. So that I can even traction with myself. Oh, look, I did a good job in talking her down off of that. Oh, I'm, feeling really good about myself now because, I was able to really, help my child out in this way or that way. It's just such bullshit. Who am I entertaining here? Who am I telling these stories to? And it's really only myself, and then you guys, of course I get you involved because I want to, it's part of the group dynamic now that that we all can share our ups and downs, fears and joys, whatever. It's but that's all bullshit. It's all a story. Lori, please go ahead.
Well, I love what you just said about how am I going to tell that story, because I wouldn't put it in exactly those words, but I would hear myself telling the story to other people, like, oh, and it's like the ego gets specialness out of tragedies and traumas and stories that we tell. And I mean, we do that. Like if we see a car accident or we see something horrible, we want to rush and tell people, right? We do. And if you look at it, it's like that is ego specialness. So I'll let go of the mic here.
It's so funny because you just reminded me, the other day I told this story. I told it to three different groups, same story, that I had watched a thing on the news and this reporter found this prisoner in a blocked cell in that whatever. And, I had this whole story of this whole thing in the prison in Syria. And I was all moved and teary-eyed about the whole thing. And then and I tell it to everybody, oh, look, this is, I'm feeling real good telling this special story. Then I see on the news that the guy wasn't even a prisoner at all. He was a intelligence officer, and I don't know for what reason, he had gone in it because the reporter was coming. So they set this thing up as like a photo op for this. I mean, I was just shocked. I'm like, oh my God.
That
I
is, that's hilarious. It's like that is just so perfect. They knew you would get hooked in.
exactly. They got me and they got me and I got other people too. And I mean, I tied it in with the lesson of the day, and I mean, honestly, oh my God, how insane it is. But that is how we keep ourselves caught up in this dream. How I keep myself caught up in this dream. I don't, I don't suppose that everybody is thinking the same way I am, but it appears pretty much so. It appears pretty much if it happened to me, it's happening to other people too, in some way or another. And we all get caught up in some believing something that we see, and then again, how do I tell this story? And let me entertain you. That's it. Really what it is. I was in a group yesterday and with Sebastian Blakesley, whom I'm just absolutely adore. And he one of the things, the first things that he said, and I believe it fully now. I've heard it a couple times. I didn't, I was like, I don't know about that, but now I believe it fully, and I understand exactly why he's saying it. The time of the teacher is over. Now is the time that we each are our own teacher, that we each have our own holy guide. And so having, someone who's, seen as a teacher, up, given a talk, people that have a YouTube channel, which there are many of, who are doing all this, teaching and it's not because of the teacher teaching, it's because of the people listening who are looking at that teacher for their information instead of looking within for what it is that the Holy Spirit has to say to them. They're looking to some guy to tell them. And this is not Sebastian saying, I'm giving up, what I'm doing, because he still is, amazing, amazing, amazing. And many people still do love to listen to him, like me. So, but if I was looking to him to tell me what to be, how to be, I would be, it's still one step away. It's still following the Buddha and never ever becoming the Buddha. You're just a follower. And he's saying now's the time to stop following and be the Buddha that you are. Mickey, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I love that. Not that I'm going to stop listening to Ken, not that I'm going to stop. Sorry, not that I'm, holy moly.
Now, you must have caught what Dove has.
And now I swallowed, I was trying to eat something and I swallowed it the wrong way.
Mm.
But the reason why this is no longer the time of the teacher is that we are understanding how individualized the curriculum is. yes, we can listen to somebody and get ideas for what might click for us. We can get hints, but we certainly can't follow somebody's recipe and expect to awaken. Nobody yet has given me a recipe. Okay, do this, do that, and then do that, and you'll be awake. It doesn't happen. I listened to Regina for a couple of years thinking, oh, if I could only do what she does, I'll wake up or I'll at least get to the point where she is. No, baloney. Nothing. And she does have steps that you can do. So does Angelo DeLulo. They both tell you, okay, you can do this exercise, or you can, meditate or contemplate or write this stuff down. And will it help? Yes. But in terms of my awakening, it is highly individualized. Nobody can tell me what to do. They can give me hints, they can show me a direction I might need to go in, but it's not going to really work the same way for me that it works for anybody else. So, thanks.
Thank you
Back
for that,
to you,
because
Lynn.
yeah, that is absolutely true. And thanks, Lori, for being here with us. That's absolutely that's and it's foolish to think that somehow or the other someone else can do it for you. I mean, let's just be real here. No one else can do this for me. I'm the only one who can do it because I'm the only one. There's, that none of those people are actually awake. That's the thing that's people who are not awake telling you how to wake up. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And here in America, we've got so many of them out there, and just in the A Course in Miracles community, they're just as lost as we are. We're all walking the same path. We're all in the same boat, and no one has any wisdom that's any higher than anybody else's. And that's the irony of that whole system you were just talking about, um, because one of their first principles is no one has any wisdom that's any greater than any other, and yet they have leaders who purport to have greater wisdom but who absolutely know that they don't. How could you have greater wisdom and think that you know more than someone else? If you have the wisdom, you know that we're all the same. Now, this was the thing I saw yesterday in myself when I was in that. It was a fairly good sized group, and and we were all chatting before, and what I do when I go in a big group, like on Zoom, is I will click through and look at every single person that's in there. I will look at them, I will look at their name, and I will give them a blessing, you know, uh, just something from my heart to them. Not They don't know that, you don't know that, but I connect with you, and so in my mind, I'm looking and connecting, and so I have this whole group of people, and then Sebastian comes on the screen, just in a little corner square, just like everybody else is, and I see him, and my heart just like bl blooms. It's like, oh my, I just feel so overwhelmed with joy and love at seeing this person. And 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 as I looked at him, I recognized like almost immediately, why am I seeing him like this and none of these other people? And there were people in that group that I know. None of these, I didn't look at, Corinne and go, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed with joy at seeing you. Like, yep, there she is. That's really what what I'm I mean, that just brought about just a tremendous wave of guilt. I was like, oh my God, you know, how can I be making these differences between these people? You know, how can I have so much joy seeing this man and then, looking at these people and just not even being moved by them? Sometimes I am moved by people because I have a connection with them. Like when Vicky comes on, if I see Vicky Poppy, anytime I see Vicky Poppy, my heart just jumps up and down and I just feel like a little kid. I'm so excited and happy. Oh, why am I not that way with everyone? Why am I not that joyful when I see Sharon or Mickey or Cher or Dove or Regis? Why? Why? It's because, I'm making these people special. And then of course that guilt came up that said I'm doing something wrong. And, I'm not saying this in order uh to be confessing to my wrong-minded seeing. I'm saying this to remind myself that first off, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm doing what I can, but but I know now, ever since that happened, and then when that happened, you know what I did? I went and looked at every one of those people, and I put in my mind, in my vision, that same picture of Sebastian, the person, in each and every one of those squares. And I felt the same thing. And, I know it's just a symbol. I know that it's not real, but it just really moved me. It really moved me. Anyway, um, let's see. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? I'm going to go ahead and let's do this. I think we've spoken enough today.